Lakshmi, you can start.
Yes. Good morning, everyone. A warm welcome to all the dignitaries, eminent speaker, virtual participants, and dear students to this national webinar on the topic Clinical Trials and Regulatory Affairs, Paradigm Shifts and Prospects, organizing by Pharmacy Practice Department, Sri Padmavati School of Pharmacy, Tirupati. Myself, Lakshmi, working as Assistant Professor in Department of Pharmacy Practice, welcome you all for this virtual live webinar. Our college has a tradition of organizing various conferences and seminars at national and international level on campus very oftenly. But due to this pandemic situation, we couldn't organize this as on this campus. Hence, we are organizing a live webinar. Now, let me invite dignitaries for today's program. I would like to invite coordinator of today's program, Mr. T.S. Durga Prasad sir. Good morning, sir. Welcome you, sir. It's my privilege to invite convener of today's program, principal of Sri Padmavati School of Pharmacy, Professor Dr. D. Rangapatula, sir, for today's session.
Thank you, ma'am. Thank you very much.
Welcome you, sir.
Thank you, ma'am. Thank you.
It's my great honor to invite patron of today's session, Director of Sri Padmavati Educational Institutions, Sri P. Praneeth, sir, for today's session.
Please, Lakshmi, go ahead. Lakshmi, please
it's
go
my
ahead.
great privilege to invite. Great privilege
Lakshmi, again, this is an audibility problem.
It's my great privilege to invite honorable speaker of today's program, Mr. Sharvan Battula, sir, for today's session. Good morning,
Yeah,
sir.
most welcome.
Good morning, everyone. Thank you so much. And it's really an honor to meet with all the old professors and you all. And nice to see you all once again and hope to interact with all the upcoming students.
Yeah, most welcome, Sharvan.
Thank you so much, sir. Thank you so much for giving this opportunity.
No, it's our, no. We feel overwhelmed for this. Okay, most welcome.
Let us begin today's event with invocation song.
Swati namastubhyam Varade kamarupini Vidyarambham karishyami Siddhir me sada सिद्धिर्भवतु मे सदा सिद्धिर्भवतु मे सदा
Now, request Mr. Sai Sunil to present glimpses of Sri Padmavati School of Pharmacy and department profile.
Sunil, you can start presenting.
సునీల్ వాయిస్ వినిపించట్లేదు.
Unmute yourself, Sunil, and you can start presenting. Yes.
వస్తుంది వస్తుంది. సునీల్ అన్మ్యూట్ చేయలేవి.
Myself, P. Sai Sunil, Assistant Professor, Sri Padmavati School of Pharmacy, Department of Pharmacy. Good morning, everyone.
Keep your mic close, Sunil. It is not audible.
Yes, sir. Before starting today's session, let's look at glimpses of SPSP in few seconds.
వినిపించట్లా.
Sri Padmavati School of Pharmacy was established in 1997 under the aegis of Padmavati Education Institution, founded by Sri late P. Mohan Rao Garu and currently led by Srimati P. Sulochana Madam Garu and Sri M. Praniti. The courses offered by Sri Padmavati School of Pharmacy are MD Pharmacy, Pharmacy, MCC, Pharmacy, and Research Center. At present, postgraduate branches in our college are pharmacology, pharmaceutics, pharmacy practice, pharmacy and postgraduate. Coming to the achievements in last 3 years, our college have received Campus Preparedness Award 2015, 8 Pratibha Award and 1 University Gold Medal. And our college had done research activities, 135 publications and 95 poster presentations. At present, 10 PhD awardees are there in our college. Then coming to the national-wide entrance test in GPAT, in 2020, 9 students have qualified for the national-wide esteemed exam. In 2019, 18 students have qualified and 12 students in 2018. In NIPER, 5 students have qualified in 2020, 5 students in 2019, 6 in 2018. We had a habit of organizing National Pharmacy Week celebrations in association with all local pharmacy and office bearers of Tirupati IPA. We'll celebrate Old Pharmacist Day celebrations, and this is in 2019. We had a habit of organizing debate, elocution, and essay writing competitions at SPSP. Then we'll have rally on Old Pharmacist Day on most important health days. This is organized on 25/9/2019 in and around Tiruchanur. Then at present, we had 10 persons pursuing PhD at our college. Then we had a habit of organizing extracurricular activities, dance and music club, sports and games club, career guidance cell, placement cell, grievance cell, and anti-ragging cell. Then we had habit of organizing workshops, conference during this pandemic era. Also, we had organized webinars on previously in 2020. We had organized transforming healthcare on World Pharmacist Day. Then we'll have annual day celebration. We had organized Pharma Week celebrations. Here you can see PCI President Dr. Suresh Garu. Then we'll organize social welfare activities on World Diabetes Day, World AIDS Day, etc. Every year we had alumni meet, get together for old students. Then coming to the pharmacy practice department, it is established in 2011 with a mission of providing clinical education that uses evidence-based approaches to optimize the practice of pharmacy, deliver quality patient care, and provide related service. The department is equipped with computers provided with internet connections, smart classrooms, referred journals. Sri Padmavati School of Pharmacy has MOU with Sri Venkateshwara Ram Narayan Ruya Government General Hospital, Tirupati for conducting clinical practicals. Then this is our department, Pharmacy Practice Department in Hospital, Drug Information Center, a division of pharmacy practice in the hospital premises at Ruya Government General Hospital, provides prompt and detailed responses to pharmacotherapy related questions as required by healthcare professionals. And this is our fifth and sixth Form D students during their ward round participation at drug chart review. And these are also fifth and sixth Form D students having interaction with patients, pharmacist counseling, and they are noting adverse drug reactions and drug-drug interaction monitoring. This is patient counseling. Through this, they will increase the quality of life of the patients. And every week there will be case presentation and journal presentation. And these are the photos with eminent personalities and eminent speakers in the Ruya Hospital campus placements drive. And thank you very much.
Thank you, Mr. Sunil. I request convener of today's program, Dr. D. Ranganaikulu sir, to present open remarks for today's session.
Yeah, thank you, Ma. Is it audible, Lakshmi?
Yes, sir.
Lakshmi, is
Yes, sir.
yeah.
Yes, sir.
So I take this privilege by inviting our today noted person, our very charm candidate, our old alumni, that Mr. Sharvan Battula, and my due respect to the organizing committee, the chairperson of the group of Padmavati Educational Institutions, Madam Sulochana Madam, and our Director Sir P. Prince Sir for Padmavati Educational Institutions, Organizing Secretary Dr. Sridhar Sir, and Department of Pharmacy Practice Head Dr. Durga Prasad and team, Lakshmi and Sunil, and all the faculty of pharmacology and my dear students. So very good morning to all, and I welcome you all on this morning free webinar program. This regarding the title is the regulatory affairs and clinical trials and Parexel and shift and prospects of this area. So indeed, it's my great pleasure to invite today our guest and to be considered as a chief guest on this today's topic, Mr. Shravan. Indeed, I'm overwhelmed looking at long back my student who has completed 2006 in this campus, and he has grown up with the different areas. He has reached the peak stage, and now I felt it's my minimum privilege to invite and to exhibit my one of product for the entire academia for his worth and progress. At the same time, I request the today's chief guest to give an gist of the guidelines regarding the clinical trials and regulatory affairs and significance of these different applications of the regulatory affairs and the clinical trials, both including right from clinical trials first to fourth stage and post-market survey. This is one of the most important allied subject present scenario. Especially, it is useful for all the kind of pharmacy programs, especially for PharmD people and clinical pharmacy people. Of course, we are, it's we're fortunate because, in sense, one way we are have many problems with the COVID pandemic, but we had made use of this pandemic stage by conducting this kind of virtual program and enlightening this kind of knowledge in the field of pharmacy profession and for the public and as well the professionals. And we are upgrading knowledge ourselves and promoting the knowledge for the society and business students. So in this regard, I welcome wholeheartedly our today's chief guest, Sharvan Battula, to give an gist of note on this, where it is very important because without clinical trials, there is no mighty, no element is going to be exist without these clinical trials. It's have its own vital role. And just I request him to give a brief note, which is because it is most important for the especially clinical pharmacy practice as well as the pharmacology and other allied lines for the research oriented and other, find out the significant validation of the therapeutic values of different moieties. So with this, I remain here. Welcome the today's chief guest for this program. Shavan, please take over.
Thank you so much, sir. It's really a great privilege and honor to be part of this session. And to be very frank, I am more than an alumni to the college and don't feel like any guest or chief guest to our college at any time. And was very happy after so many years. Got in touch with you all and could able to see you all not in person, but at least over this webinar. So thank you so much for giving me this opportunity.
God bless you.
Thank you very much, sir. Now let us move on to the today's scientific program. Before that, I request Mrs. C. Sirisha to give brief citation of today's speaker.
Good morning to all the dear students. Myself, C. Sirisha, working as assistant professor in the Sri Padmavati School of Pharmacy. Today, I am here to represent the citation regarding Sharvan Battula sir, presently working as manager in regulatory affairs in Parexel International Clinical Research Private Limited. Sir completed his certification course in International Society of Pharmacoeconomics and Outcomes Research in the year 2013. Sir also completed Executive General Management Program in the year 2015 in Indian Institute of Management in Bangalore. Regarding Sir experience, Sir had more than 10 years of experience in regulatory affairs in Parexel and had experience in phase 1, phase 2, phase 3 and phase 4 clinical trials in regulatory affairs. SAR had experience in management of clinical trials. SAR gained experience as healthcare research analyst. SAR gained significant experience in various therapeutic areas of new chemical entities, biologicals, and vaccines. SAR has led and managed many international projects as a part of global project management team. SAR played a key role in regulatory lead for global clinical trials projects. Thank you. Thank you for giving me this opportunity, sir.
Thank you, Sirisha. I request Honorable Speaker of today's program, Mr. Sharvan Battula sir, to start the session.
Thank you so much for that. Thank you so much for the nice introduction. I'll start sharing my screen. Please let me know once you all can see my screen. Just to get a note on,
Yes, sir. Please carry on.
you can see my screen?
No, not yet.
Not yet. Okay. Mm-hmm.
Yes, sir. Now it is visible.
Visible now? Okay, fine. So today's target audience are pharma budding students, and I would be briefing out on major aspects of clinical trials, regulatory affairs. What's the paradigm shift we had it across the year, couple of decades, and what are the prospects? So just before getting into it, I hope most of the students would be even understanding Telugu, because I would be using a bit of a Telugu words in between, just to make sure that we do not deviate off from that. But keeping in mind, definitely I would not use much of a Telugu words. Okay. So after this session, today's session, we all will be able to have a broad idea about clinical trials, its evolution, and what is a clinical trial, what are the different phases of trials, and what are the types of clinical trials, why do we need clinical trials actually, and what is the regulatory affairs, and why do regulatory affairs department and regulations are quite important, and why do we need to understand the local regulations of any country in specific. And I would be focusing on India, where the Indian clinical research has been booming up across since the time of 2000, and there was a shift in the governing bodies, the Indian Health Authority, various aspects from the regulations perspective and all, and where do we stand today. So the understanding of local regulations that govern the clinical research in India would be giving an in-depth overview of the regulatory approval process in India, import-export licenses, and study registration, and some short guidances for special population studies. And one of the major aspect or point of interest for us today would be an emergency use
Sir, excuse us,
authorization.
sir.
Yeah.
We have a small audio problem from your end, sir. Like
Okay.
it is not
Okay.
continuous.
It is not continuous. Okay. Okay. Yeah. Is this fine now?
Still we are getting a disturbed voice, sir.
Okay. Okay. Let me quickly check.
Okay, sir. Please continue.
Yeah. Okay.
Kindly share your screen, sir, once again.
Yes. Yes. I'm just trying to share my screen. Is my screen visible now?
Yes, sir. Yes.
Okay.
Please continue, sir. Sorry for the inconvenience.
No worries at all. Are you people still see my screen?
Yes, sir. We are able to see screen. Yes.
Okay. So before starting, just a quick disclaimer from my end. So all the views expressed in this session are purely my opinion, and my organization does not take any liability for any of these views expressed by me. Okay. So don't be with that this is something which a company is speaking. It is more of an Sharvan Battula who is discussing on these aspects, and we can discuss more on uh, any of the concept which is not clear or which you feel like to be of more interest for you anytime. Okay, so quick basic rules. Don't get surprised or get tensed that, start of the slides itself. There are quite a rules. We'll keep a close tap on the time, because there is a vast things to be covered, and I sometimes get indulged in too many of the informations wherein we sometimes miss on the time. So we'll keep a close tap on the time, and we all are aware of any phones, anything which we do not encourage to take it up in between for the students. So please make sure, if you are you have any urgent call to take, please mute yourselves. And this session would be more of a brainstorming session for all of us, and quite interesting, with couple of very interesting facts for clinical trials and regulatory affairs. And a couple of occasions I could be able to pose questions wherein it goes up to in group discussion mode. And every opinion, every question does matter to me and to all. So don't be with an opinion that is my question quite a valid one, or what would others think if I would ask this question? Is this a genuine question, or is it a silly question? There is nothing like that. Every question is welcome. And end of the day, we are to be in the same page, and that's where are gonna end it off. Some virtual session rules, internet issues which we had seen, some technical issues could be at my end, so don't be panic and don't be within a rush mode. We need to try to just restart our system. I did had a technical issue at the start. Dr. Ranganayakula sir did say me that, if you can just restart your laptop once. I just did that, and the issue with the audio is totally resolved. So we need to just get on with that. Okay. So clinical trials, what is a clinical trial and what are the phases, types of clinical trials, and why do we need clinical trials? So if you see, clinical trial is a medical research that it's conducted as a part of a study that looks for a new drug or an investigational new drug, and it can be anything. It can be a new chemical entity or biological entity, and a new procedures or devices, and the new ways of treatment for a existing therapy. So the type of care which we are providing to improve the quality of life as well for the people who are suffering from chronic diseases. So it is not destined that clinical trials are only for medicines or for drugs, or it's only for devices, or it is only for a certain type of chemical entities or biological entities. So any research, any medical research, the term medical is again quite important, wherein we are working with human population, and these new drugs or the investigational new drugs or these moieties can be either drugs of biological or chemical origin, can be devices like a surgical device or anything, and a new way of treating for an existing therapy. Like we have insulin which is been given by a shot of injection, right? But if tomorrow a new way of treatment for insulin is being diagnosed or been invented, be it an oral or be it an inhaler, then it's like a new way of treating an existing therapy. We have an existing therapy for this disease, but this is again considered as in a clinical trial. Or there are certain chronic diseases wherein we do not cure the disease completely, and that is for obvious reasons. We cannot cure a stage 3 cancer, but the intent of the clinical trial or the molecule could be that we improve the quality of life of the patient, wherein the patients can be suffering from various adverse effects of a cancer treatment. And that is where exactly we need to focus. And I have seen in my personal life wherein there were quite a lot of uh, cancer studies which I was been working across in the past, but the treatment or the clinical trial, the basic cause or the purpose was not to treat the cancer, but to treat the adverse effects, be it alopecia, be it the decline in the hemoglobin content in the body of the patient. So these are the different aspects. So we need to be very, very careful on all these aspects, because from the general perspective, clinical trial for a common man is very, very simple, that they always think that it is always something, a new drug or a new investigational drug or in a chemical moiety. They do not think on the different aspects, and this is where exactly there's a lot of knowledge gap across the world from the common public. And this something which we as a professionals in pharmacy and who are working in clinical trials are the better people who can better explain to the society on these aspects. And ultimate the goal is to have a safety and effectiveness of these products, be it a chemical moiety or a biological entity or the device. So everything needs to be considered over this. Now, coming to the next definition of clinical trial, this is more from our Indian regulations, the New Drugs and Clinical Trial Rules 2019, which is part of the Drugs and Cosmetics Act, India. So it states that they have redefined the clinical trial definition in 2019, which states that clinical trial in relation to a new drug or investigational new drug means any systematic study of such new drug or IND in human subjects to generate data for discovering or verifying its first and foremost primary thing is a clinical effect. Next is the pharmacological and effects, which includes the pharmacokinetics and the pharmacodynamic parameters. See the adverse effects. And the ultimate objective again remains the same, the safety, efficacy, or tolerance of those new drugs or the investigational new drugs. Fine. So phases of the clinical trials, every one of us know this a lot, and I know this is part of the curriculum or wherever you read about clinical trials, you do come across for this. I'm not here to discuss much on these aspects for the phases of clinical trials, just to give you a brief that it starts from phase 1, phase 2, then phase 3, and the final one is the phase 4. But there is a small, catch which we need to understand is that the phase 4, the drug is already in market. And why do we need to have a phase 4 studies? We all might have studied in our third year pharmacology itself. But just to give you an aspect, if somebody asks us, give it into short words, what are the main aspects of phase 1, phase 2, phase 3, and phase 4? The phase 1, the primary thing, I do understand that this representation shows the number of people, if you can identify phase 1, phase 2, and phase 3. And the phase 4, I just put up the entire globe. Okay, the only intent is just to, I do hear so many times when I interview people, when I ask them for phase 1, phase 2, phase 3, and phase 4, they do define as per the patient population. They are the primary things. But the major point which we need to concentrate when we explain as a pharmacy students for the phase 1, phase 2, phase 3, and phase 4 is the phase 1 primary thing is safety. How much is the therapeutic efficacy of any drug? If it is not safe, this drug cannot come to the market actually. And that is where exactly, if you people see my designation, regulatory affairs and access, so that is what the world has evolved. The world has evolved from only regulatory affairs to access. Access is something, access to the medications to the common public or to the society. So this is something which is the evolution is happening in this field altogether. If we have a paracetamol tablet for one brand, I'm just giving an example, which reduces a fever and its efficacy is 80%. Tomorrow, I come with a new paracetamol molecule and I say that my paracetamol molecule is 95% efficacious. We're totally fine. We're totally fine with that. But how about the safety? And I slowly say that, you know what? But the safety parameters for my molecule of paracetamol is not up to the mark. There are a lot of safety issues. There are a lot of adverse events or, fatal events which could be occurring if you take. But I guarantee you that it is 98% efficacious. Do you think anyone would be in a position to accept that? Even though it is more efficacious, but it is less safe? No. And that's the main reason, and that's the main intent. The main, what we say, the primary motto for the phase 1 is to determine safety. Most of the phase 1 studies are conducted on healthy humans. The reason why it is, the healthy humans are devoid of any diseases, and that is the best source where we can see the safety parameters of any molecule. If a very healthy person is showing any adverse events or anything, then it does impact a lot actually. A phase 3 trials, as we see, it is a confirmatory trial where we do it on a very huge population. They are most of the global clinical trials wherein patients from across the world are being taken across. And that is where exactly we try to give a lot of focus on global clinical trials, just to make sure that we do not end up into any fatal situations once the drug is already marketed for the patients and they are ready to take it from the market. We all know, we have been seen, we might have read these as students, you all might have read these across in the pharmacology as well, the gray baby syndrome effects and other things. What were these reasons actually? That's the main intent of having these all aspects of having a confirmatory clinical trial on a greater population, have an ample amount of data which needs to be submitted to the health authorities. And now I say that, after the phase 3 trial, every company goes to the health authorities. And to be very frank, I use the word very specifically health authority because most of the time I could see that many of us use the word or the term as FDA. And to be very frank, FDA is not the health authority. FDA is a health authority for only one country, or the country's health authority name could be defined. One or two countries have that. But the use of terminology health authority defines that it is the ultimate decision maker for that country. And every country's health authority names differ. And I see this quite a lot of time when I interview people as well, that they very, very commonly use the term as FDA. which I feel couldn't be a right word, because I do understand that the time when we all reading, we have the more focus on US FDA, and that's something which every one of us know it. Right? Post-marketing studies, once the drug is out in the market, but we still need to observe how the drug is doing it off across. Otherwise, we have these gray baby syndromes and other aspects of Vioxx is one of the molecule which has been recalled by Merck because of cardiac arrhythmias, and these are the aspects which have created a need of the post-marketing studies, also equally important when we compare from the phase 1 studies as well. Okay. Now, type of clinical trials, and there is a strike through for clinical. Okay, so this is just an aspect. This is not in a definition by bookish aspects on other things, but just to give you a broader idea about different kinds of trials. What do they exist? Where do they exist? And do they exist? And how do are they differ from a different kind of treatment trials and other aspects actually? So that is where exactly I just try to put this across. And this is something which is not defined or limited to what I will be showing now. Okay, so just make sure of this. There are treatment trials, there are prevention trials, there are diagnostic trials, there are quality of life trials, the compassionate use, expanded use, or named patient program. Oops. So don't get confused or don't get bogged down with, oh my God, are there something more to learn? No, it is not something more to learn. It is just, type of the trials which happen. Just on a basic, on a normal common man's perspective, we will come across on the compassionate use, expanded use, or named patient program, which is very, very interesting though. Okay, treatment trials name suggests it is to treat a disease or a condition. Okay, so we need to understand disease or a condition. Okay, both, right? Prevention trials. What are prevention trials? Prevention trials are something which prevent us from that disease or something. So what could be the best examples for this? Vaccines. Diagnostic trials. These are the trials which are used for the diagnostic agents, right? So it is not like that only the clinical trials happen only for those which are getting treated or for prevention. We do undergo so many diagnostic tests for any treatment before we are taking any medicine or other. Who defines that? So what does those diagnostic agents, if we are impregnating any of the diagnostic agents to have a contrasting agents into our body and try to see whether there are blocks into the body, into the arteries, do you think that those agents safe on our body? We need to have them try it, right? And how do we do that? They have been, we can consider them as diagnostic. Quality of life trials, as I said, that all trials or all medications or all treatment aspects are not always to treat the disease completely. We cannot treat the disease completely. If we can treat a disease completely, then we are not humans. We are God, which is not the case, right? And every person who is been suffering from one or the other disease, they would have some or the other aspects of their quality of life getting deteriorated. A lame person cannot walk properly because his leg has been amputated. And why his leg has been amputated? Because he had a diabetic foot or something. Now he is getting treatment for the diabetes. That is fine. But there are trials which I have seen where they focus on the person's leg has been amputated, his quality of life has decreased or has deviated from his previous way. Can we have some instrument or any of a device or any prosthetic which could make him that he can again stand on his both feet? Definitely, if a person who used to run and now he is amputated with one leg, there is definite cause that he's on a wheelchair, his quality of life has changed, right? But if you think that he can once again walk because of this prosthetic leg, there is a change in his quality of life, right? So these are the things which is, I just, broadly gave it to it on these aspects. And the reason why it is, you can further classify it, but this is the broader things which I have, put it up just to have a brief idea. Next one is the compassionate use, expanded use, or named patient program. So what exactly is the compassionate use? Just wanted to understand from the students or anyone. Does anyone have got did anyone hear about this compassionate use? Okay, I take it as no. I'm just trying to understand, when we were referring to the phases of clinical trials over here, we all know that after phase 1, phase 2, phase 3, the data of the clinical trials patients are being submitted to get the marketing approval, right? And every country health authority has got their own regulation and their regulatory requirements that they also want to see their own patient data, their country patient data, and analyze whether this drug would be effective or would be a viable drug to be marketed in our country, right? So that is where exactly after the phase 3 it happens. So there could be instances wherein, if we see, compassionate use program is where the drug is actually not marketed in that country. The reason why it is that you do not have any data on the patients of the country. For example, let us take it for India. Okay, there is a drug which is a very blockbuster drug, well marketed in European countries, in Western countries, in Latin American countries, and some of the Asian countries. Okay, but that company, that sponsor or the pharma company, did not do any clinical trials on Indian patients. Or when they were doing a phase 3 global clinical trial, they did not opt for India because of any of the reasons, because of their financial or reasons, or their research strategy was altogether different. They never intended to market in India altogether, and that's why they did not do it. But it's an oncological drug. Let us take a very rare blood cancer or something like that. Okay. And to be just give you a picture, or to give you an idea about how it could be, let us just have a role play of that. Okay, we have Durga Prasad sir, we have uh, uh, I'm okay. We have two doctors, well-known doctors. One is Dr. Durga Prasad and one is myself in oncology. And Durga Prasad sir is a doctor in Tirupati, and I am a doctor in Bangalore. And we both are well-known oncologists, and we are doing our part of patient care, and we are also interested in clinical trials and clinical research. So though we do not know each other, but we both are well-known oncologists. So we would have been always interacted on one or the other front, be it on some international conferences, or be it on various webinars, or any of the aspects of related to oncology. One fine day, there's one patient, okay, who is somebody with name ABC, has visited to Dr. Durga Prasad sir. And Dr. Durga Prasad sir saw, and he saw that this patient is suffering from a very, very rare cancer, blood cancer. We do not have a medicine for this drug approved in India. And then, but he did read a couple of journals, and he did listen to one of a drug which is marketed in Europe and in Latin American countries, but not in USA. Okay, just giving an example. And we both had a talk with each other, and he said me that there is a patient, and he feels like that one of the patient which he saw yesterday was very active and everything, but has been diagnosed with this rare blood cancer. We do not have, unfortunately, do not have a medicine. And we know that there is a medicine which is marketed, which is clinical trialed in European countries and marketed in that country. And now in that situation, now we need to understand on the ethical aspects, and also from the patient safety perspective. This is something which is a primary motto for every healthcare person, and even for the regulatory authority as well. So we even interacted with someone. We both interacted with someone, or I gave some advice to Dr. Durga Prasad sir. He interacted with someone in Europe, some best oncologist, and that oncologist, somebody who is staying in Europe, he says that, you know what, this is a miracle drug. I have tested on 5 patients, and all the 5 patients have shown a very, very great extent of cure. Of course, it was not 100% cure, but their life expectancy has been increased to a great extent. Now, what do we do? Do we ask the company to do a clinical trial in India, get a Indian patient data generated, and then submit to the health authority and get the marketing approval? Then we prescribe. It would at least take 5 to 6 years, right? And when we consider the average drug development right from the basic till it has been launched into the phase 4 or it is in the clinics, it at least takes 15 to 20 years or more than that sometimes. But do you think that we wait for even 5 years, the condition of the patient worsens, right? So in those kind of situations, this is the concept which is being brought up by the health authorities and by the clinical research. So this is what is called a compassionate use or expanded use or a named patient program, wherein the drug which is not marketed in our country, we still can request the government to approve that drug only for that one patient. Be it very, very clear. I'm telling you this very, very clear. You are getting medication only for only that patient only, no one else. You cannot get, if you are trying to get that medication for some other purpose and selling it without the approval from the Indian health authority or that country's health authority, it is a legal crime, because you do not have a marketing approval for that drug in India. Now, but see, on the other aspect, there is one patient who could be benefited from it. So can we do this? This is the process, or this is the regulation which states compassionate use or expanded use or named patient program. And do we have this regulation from our Indian guidance's perspective? Yes. The chapter 11 of the new drugs and clinical trial rules states about this. It speaks about import or manufacture of unapproved new drug for treatment of patients in government hospital and government medical institutions. So the use can only be done in a government hospital or government medical institutions. The reason why it is, tomorrow we should not land up into a trouble that it is being used haphazardly without any proper marketing approval. Clear? Now, clinical research evaluation, in India, if you see, the startups of clinical trials in India happened way back in mid-90s, 1990s, in 1995 sometime. Okay, and the tipping point of the regulations and the conducive for global clinical trials did happen after close to 10 years. And from 2005, it was a golden era. It was a golden era of Indian clinical research. I do have another slide deck which was presented way back in 2010 or 11 when I was just at the start of my career in clinical research, and it was a presentation given by the Drug Control General of India, Dr. Surinder, at that time, wherein he has shown the curve for the Indian clinical research was just growing exponential from 2005. Because the guidances were being made in that way, wherein the global clinical trials were more conducive. And then, after 2000 and 2011 and all, there were a bit of a dip in the clinical research in India, especially not from the global perspective, because of various factors of public and media pressures. And there were some case been running from one of an NGO at the Supreme Court of India, wherein there have been questions being put up, trying to question the Indian Health Authority, CDSCO, questioning their ability and capability for clinical trials in India, which were not happening more ethical. And there were a lot of loopholes being identified in the clinical trials which are happening in India. And there were even questions being raised wherein the Indian patients of the population were getting exploited by the pharma companies only for the sake of having the number of patients from India. What could be the reason? It could be a reason that India was having a great pool of patients, and that is where exactly, and you get a lot of patients from one country, which would reduce their timeline of clinical research altogether. They can speed up the clinical trials. So the patient recruitment happens very fast. But there were, pros and cons on all those aspects. And then, there were pressures from the public and media as well. And that has, made up to a stern change into the regulations, and there were a very very strict regulations which were brought into enforce from 2012 and 2013. And then it has become a quite a tough situation for the pharma companies and other things try to adapt to these new regulations, because there were again a lot of questioning. The regulations were sometimes not industrial friendly as well and other things. And this actually took some time, and it was more or like an slowdown or a slump on the Indian clinical research for those 5 to 6 years. And then this steadily started picking up from 2017 and all. And in 2019, taking into the consideration of all the aspects, the Indian Health Authority did come up with another regulation. So in 2013, there were stringent regulations which were introduced. And in 2019, there were the regulations which were introduced once again to balance both the aspects of the industry and also from the patient's protection and the ethical aspects as well. So that's something which is a brief of that. There is a lot to talk in this aspect, but I do not want to get into all those. Just to give you a brief idea. Now you see, this is the something which I was speaking about. This is not my slide, and this was a slide which was presented by the Drug Control General of India, Dr. Surinder, way back in 2011, wherein if you can see the growth of Indian clinical trial industry, if you see the exponential growth in US $1 million, right? So this was the potential, and that is where exactly the Indian Health Authority also started the encouraging in clinical trials, because it's also in a very very good economic growth driven as well. And now if you see how are the trials which have been conducted, and this is from the clinical trials gov, and the latest information which we could see it over here is as of 11th of March 2021. If we see that the different type of trials which are registered in clinical trials gov, a total of, if you see, there are 3,70,000. These are the number of trials which are registered, and trials which are posted the results, that is something 47,000. And I will discuss further in deep about why is these clinical trials needs to be posted on these public sites of the health authorities, be it US FDA or the Indian government also has got their own database which is called CTRI, Clinical Trials Registry of India. The reason why it is, we need to understand how many trials are going on in the country, and if somebody wants to know that what kind of trial is undergoing, we need to understand those. I'm trying to see, if you see, why do we need clinical trials? As per the World in Data org, this is an organization which collects data from various aspects from across the world. If you see, I did check the latest information, but as of yesterday, they still have the data of 2017, and probably they are in process of collecting different data for the further years as well. But if you see the disease burden across the world, if you see the burden of disease, cardiovascular diseases are 365 millions. The next comes is the cancer, the next comes is the neonatal disorders, musculoskeletal disorders, everything. If you see, these are the things which are there. And to be very frank, the current era, before the COVID-19 pandemic, but to be very fair, the current era is majorly focused on cardiovascular diseases or the oncological diseases. Most of the drugs which you see in the market, be it the latest drugs which have been approved by companies like Novartis, which are the costliest drugs in the world, their also focus is on cancer. Because this is the reason. It is not like that the the research companies or the pharma companies are investing so much on a particular therapeutic area? The reason is that we already have a data. The disease burden across the world, we can see it: cardiovascular diseases, cancers, and even for the cardiovascular diseases, the underlying causes could be the metabolic diseases like the diabetes mellitus, which triggers the risk of cardiovascular diseases actually. Clear? And if you see the changing patterns for India specific, if you see, the tropical diseases are the least one, but see, in India, the extent of cancer has been surpassed post the cardiovascular diseases. So this is where exactly, if you see, a lot of research happens, a lot of oncological trials do happen in India, and then even the cardiovascular and the diabetes mellitus, because we have a lot of patients in these. This is the disease pattern which we have it. But when we see from the other perspective, we almost contribute 7% of the GDP for healthcare, and the healthcare sector is at almost 16.28%, which is sometimes I feel quite less when we compare with the type of population or the number of population which we have. But still, there are a lot of opportunities for conducting clinical trials in India. So these are the different aspects which make so many companies to think for India being one of and the prime destination for clinical trials. Now we see, the process from the start of the basic research to the drug development. I said it takes at least 15 to 20 years at least. So if we start drug which is in the laboratory stage in 2020, the fastest we can have the drug by 2035 probably, after completing the different preclinical, then the clinical trials, and then the patient care, it is coming up to the clinic. What could be the reason for it? The reason is that the very low success rate, the lack of knowledge and awareness among the people, which is one of the prime reason actually. The low success rate, we all know, out of 10,000 compounds which are in a drug discovery stage, all of a sudden it comes. And I have personally faced these kind of situations very well. To be very frank, last week itself, we were full-fledgedly on a full pace on one of a clinical trial, which was just awarded, trying to have everything done. It was an oncological trial, and bang on, there was an email which comes up all of a sudden on Tuesday stating that please stop all the activities. What is the reason? Because the molecule which we were about to do a phase 3 trial, there was one more phase 3 trial which was happening, and they could find that there are some serious events which are happening with this molecule. And this is in the phase 3. Now you imagine how much of amount of time research have already been spent as part of drug discovery, as part of clinical trial, preclinical trials, and clinical trials of phase 1 and phase 2. Right? So that's something which is a low success rate. That's where exactly we need more clinical trials to surpass this. We know the rate of success of molecules are decreasing. So the faster we do the clinical trials, the more we do the clinical trials, we would be in a better position to have more and more drugs coming for approval at least. Another basic point: lack of knowledge or awareness. Now, if you see, question to every one of us: have you ever participated in any clinical trial? Anyone? Do we know anyone of our close relation who has ever participated in clinical trial? Does we know? I would understand, the answers from, if I take a group of people, the number of people saying no would be much, much more than the number of people saying yes. That's why I have put it up in this way. Agree with me? Right? Now, why? What is the reason? Did we ever question on this? Or did we try to understand why we did not take part in a clinical trial when we see that the clinical trials are good? The reason why is we all feel that, we have done a survey. This is from one of a survey actually, where people say that I do not feel knowledgeable about clinical trials, which is the true fact actually. And some people say, I am afraid of the risks involved, which is again one of the main reason. And some people say, no study in my area. What do you mean by no study in my area? People do not know that there is a clinical trial which is happening for their disease, for which they are incurable. They know that this disease is incurable for them, but they do not know that there is a nearby hospital which is at a radius of 3 to 4 kilometers and there is a clinical trial happening for that disease. They do not know. And this is where exactly those public domains or registries, which we call it in the clinical research terminology, which is clinicaltrials.gov, Clinical Trial Registry India, CTRI, where the health authorities have mandated that if you are doing a trial in this country, make sure you post the details of the trials in a common man's understanding. They give some set of instructions and everything, put it up there so that anyone who wants to see, they can visit there and see whether there is a trial which is going across nearby. If the trial is happening, who is the investigator? Those details are there actually. Okay, so that's a brief about the clinical research and what's the paradigm shift which is happening across the clinical research industry, and what are the opportunities. From the opportunity perspective, there are so many actually, because as I have said that in India the regulations have been improved and other things. I don't call it as an improved. Regulations have changed, I would put it up in this way, because every country regulations do change now and then, just to make sure that we are at par for the ethical aspects and the safety of the patients. That's the utmost important for any regulatory authority. Clear? So I give it a break here. Are there any questions from anyone? Okay, I take this as no. So shall we continue with the rest of the things? I know we are short of time, but I'll try to quickly run through, and you're always welcome to reach out to me at any given point of time. Okay. So what is regulatory affairs? Why do regulations are important for us? Why do we need to understand a local regulation for a country specific? Why do we need to understand local regulations of a specific country? Why can't we have a common regulations to conduct a clinical trial or for anything across the world? Common thing, is that possible? The obvious answer is no, it cannot. Every country has got their own governance. Every country has got their own kind of people who live and who have been brought up into a cultural aspects from where they have been driven. So you cannot have a common law for everyone across the world. So do the regulations. We can have an umbrella thing, some basic things, very, very basic things, that these are 1, 2, 3 basic things should be there. Yes. But when you get deeper into a country regulations, they do differ. Every country it is, I am telling. If you hear about any of the people telling that, no, for all the European countries, we have an EU regulation. I understand that. But I know from my practical experiences, the EU regulations are for all the European Union countries. Indeed, those European Union countries have got some or the other additional requirements when you go for a regulatory submission into that country. Okay. They are complex and they are like that. They should be. Yeah. Local regulations. Why do we need to have local regulations in a country? So that have an awareness on how to do a trial or how a trial to be conducted in that country, understand the local customization of different documents and the procedures involved for a conduct of a clinical trial in that country. And the final one is ensure compliance with the regulations. Otherwise, get ready to be sued by the health authority or by the government. You cannot say that, I can do this kind of a trial, I can do this way in these country, I will do the same way in India as well. No, you cannot do that. That's the obvious reason why. If you can understand that, Pfizer has got approval for their COVID-19 vaccine in US and Europe. It's not yet approved for emergency use in India. But do you think if Pfizer comes up and says that, no, I have approval in those countries, I will even just start marketing them in India? No, you can't do that. You need to be compliant. And how do you need to be compliant? You to adhere to the country regulations and try to understand what all needs to be done. Now you see the New Drugs and Clinical Trials 2019, which is now a part of the Drugs and Cosmetics Act 1940 and the Rules 1945, which were released by the official Gazette GSR 227E on 19th March 2019. This is the document which is referred as a local regulation for the conduct of clinical trials and for bioavailability and bioequivalence studies in India. It's a huge document. I would be sharing that with you all. I would be sharing with Durga Prasad sir, and he can share that with you all. But just to give you an idea, I know you people might have read about Drugs and Cosmetics Act on a broader aspect in your third year B Pharmacy probably, which was at that time, I think when I was in third year B Pharmacy, yeah, that was the time where we had pharmaceutical jurisprudence subject, and we used to have the Drugs and Cosmetics Act. So in the Drugs and Cosmetics Act, you will have all the regulations, right from the different aspects of labeling, everything. But if you need to focus on new drugs and clinical trials, you have to get onto this new regulation, which is again part of the Drugs and Cosmetics Act only. New Drugs and Clinical Trial Rules 2019. So these were used for the clinical trials. These were guidance. If you see on a broadly, they are classified into different chapters and schedules. So there are a total of 13 chapters and 8 schedules in it. Okay. And if you see, these are the different aspects of what does each chapter speaks about. Okay. So we need to see that this is the entire guidance document which speaks about clinical trials. If you need to understand that you have to do a clinical trial of a new drug or investigational new drug, you need to get into chapter 5, where it speaks about clinical trials, bioavailability, bioequivalence studies of new drugs and investigational new drugs. This is how you have to do it. Clear? These are the different schedules actually. What are the general principles and practices? There are a total of 8 schedules. So post-marketing assessment of a new drug, what do you need to do? PSURs, what are the kind of PSURs? How do you need to submit? What are the timelines for submissions and other things? And for a conduct of clinical trial from A to Z, what are the requirements? So what should be the requirement from a clinical trial site perspective? What should be a requirement from the ethics committee perspective? Everything comes under 3rd schedule. Okay, I know it could be quite tough to understand this at this quick time, but definitely try to give it a thought. And if you people have any doubts or anything you need to be clarified, please do not hesitate to reach out to me. I'm always there to try to explain more things. And if things permit everything, and the COVID situations goes well, definitely could be a time that where I could meet you all in person as well, and then we can discuss more on those. Fine. So regulatory authority in India, who is the regulatory authority in India? Which body oversees the entire compliance of clinical trials of the drugs which have been marketed in India? It's CDSCO, Central Drug Standard Control Organization. So that's the portal, and it is headed by Dr. VG Somani right now. So what's his role? He is the main responsible person for running the Central Drugs Control Organization, and that's the organization which gives permissions either for a clinical trial or for a marketing authorization of any of a drug. Okay, and he is the one who actually is under the Directorate General of Health Services, which is under the Ministry of Health, Government of India. DCGI also has got offices. He sits in New Delhi, but DCGI also has got offices across the states or the zones, which are called as the state drug authorities or the central drug authorities. Okay. What are the prerequisites for a conduct of clinical trial in India? What could be a prerequisite? When you see, you need to have an approval. If you have to conduct a clinical trial in India, you have to have approval from the DCGI office, that is the CDSC office. The same rule applies for every country. You need to have an approval from their respective health authority to make sure you do the clinical trial. Without having that, no, you cannot do that. If the drugs have been imported, if the drugs have been not manufactured here in this country or been imported, you should have an import license. Okay. If the biological samples have been sent out of India, you should have an export license. And there's a small asterisk mark over there. We will come in deep on that aspects, the changes which recently happened for the export license aspect as well. Now, what is the reason, biological samples have been sent out of India in a clinical trial? So just to give you a brief idea, what is the reason, the clinical trials or the cost of the medicines go too high? The reason why is the cost of clinical trials which are involved are also equally high. If you have to import a medication, you have to apply for an import license, and the drug has to be shipped from the other country. And from there to in a country like India, when you're shipping, you need to make sure that the drug is maintained properly at the cold storage temperature or whatever is the normal temperature which needs to be maintained. Everything needs to be packed properly. There should not happen any damage during the entire course of transport. Now, from the biological samples perspective, you have a patient whom you think that he could be your clinical trial patient, and the patient has agreed to be part of a clinical trial. You take blood samples for that patient, try to see whether the requirement of the clinical trial for your study matches with the patient's profile. So there should be, the reason is that every trial will have a different focus. So they need to have some inclusion and exclusion criteria. So you need to understand those. You need to do some tests and see whether the patient is falling within the criteria to be selected for this clinical trial. When you do these trials, there are only some tests which you can perform at the hospital. Rest of the tests cannot be performed at the hospital. They need to be shipped to a central drug testing or biological sample testing laboratory. Why? What is the reason? To avoid any errors in the calculation and how you do it. It's the same Domino's pizza which tastes different in India and it tastes different in Europe and in America. It's the same company, it's the same brand, everything. So there could be a changes in the chemicals as well which they use. That in turn, that slight difference in those values could also impact the trial results to a greater extent. And that is where exactly it has been, as per the governance from the global perspective, biological samples are always or most of the time tested in central laboratories, so that you have uniformity in the testing and there are no changes or biasness, or you do not deviate from the results. Obtain ethics committee approval from each participating site in India. So most of the times in India, if you see, it's a parallel process. You submit to the Indian Health Authority and you also have to submit it to the ethics committees. So what are these ethics committees? So every clinical trial site or the hospital where you are doing a clinical trial should have an ethics committee, which would have their own people like the president, the member secretary, and the ethics committee quorum members, who would be including with the therapeutic area specialists like the doctors, lawyer, a common man, a lay person. Now you might be thinking that why do these people need to be part of an hospital ethics committee? The reason why it is, if a clinical trial proposal or a protocol has come, which they would be reviewing, it needs to be reviewed and thought from all the different aspects. The common man will think from the common man's perspective that whether this trial or whether this medication which is being talked in this clinical trial does have any value, me being a common man, whether I would be getting benefited or not. I means a common man would be getting benefited or not. A lawyer who looks after the ethical aspects, whether the trial, study design and everything are ethically being designed or not. Are there any unethical aspects which needs to be taken into account, and then inform the sponsor that we feel that this part of the study design is not so conducive to be part of in India and other things. We do, to be very frank, I'll tell you, if we see the capsule, the outer shell of the capsule is prepared from gelatin, and from where the gelatin comes, it's an animal source. There are ethics committees, I myself have personally experienced, wherein they have questioned that are there any alternatives for this, because the state where we live, 95% are vegetarian, and we do not encourage the gelatins which have come from an animal source. So now you understand the level of drill down which happens for every study, be it from ethical perspective and every other aspect which needs to be there. And the last one, if you are starting a clinical trial in India, you need to make sure that you register that trial in this public domain clinical trial registry India website, which is nothing but an equivalent of clinicaltrials.gov of US FDA. Now, this is a very busy slide, but would just give you a brief about how the Indian regulatory submissions happen, and how does these so on the right hand side of the screen, if you all can see, the EC submission is there. So let's just quickly go very little steps over there, we can see it off. If you see ethics committee submissions, all the essential documents from the site and the sponsor are being collected, and they are being submitted to the site. In India, we have institutional ethics committee. This is the concept in India. There are countries in Europe and some countries, even we take it as an US, we have a centralized ethics committee. There is only one ethics committee which will give an approval for the trial, but for all the investigators in that country. That is not the situation in India. In India, we have a local ethics committee. Every site or every hospital will have its own institutional ethics committee, and the investigator who is doing the trial or agreed to participate in the trial has to get the approval from their respective ethics committee. That's it. There is no change in that. You cannot go on that. You cannot say that what, my institutional ethics committee is not working properly, or I have ego issues with my institutional ethics committees. I'm sorry, I would go and have EC ethics committee approval from a different hospital. Is that fine? No, you cannot. Because that institutional ethics committee will even make the investigator accountable for anything happening in their hospital. And if the trial goes wrong or anything, and if the media comes up and says that there's something going very too wrong by the investigator or anything, then who has to take the accountability? The investigator has to take the accountability. Right? So once the documents are being given, as an organization, be it a CRO or a sponsor, our responsibility lies is to prepare the required documents for the ethics committee, collect them everything, and give it to the principal investigator. It is the principal investigator of that hospital, whoever has been agreed to participate in the trial, he or she would be submitting. And the team size of a site would be the doctor who actually had agreed to take part in the clinical trial is called a principal investigator. He would have a sub-investigator or co-investigator under him or her, who would be equally taking responsibilities in the absence of the principal investigator. And you will have the study team who would have study nurses, one or two, or a study coordinator. One designated study coordinator will be there for every trial, who would be in and out making all the notes for the trial patients. So this is, a short about the clinical team which works at the hospital. Now you see, they are the one who will submit to the ethics committee, and then the ethics committee will review the study protocol and approve. But when you see from the regulatory submissions perspective, and these two are parallel, okay, if you see the drawn the line over there and written in parallel. So it is not like you have to get the approval from one and then go ahead with it. There are certain countries in Europe, okay, like Austria and other countries, and even a country like Vietnam in Asia Pacific, where the restriction is that you should first have ethics committee approval. Without having the ethics committee approval, you even cannot submit to their regulatory authorities. That's the guidance. That's the rule which they have done it for their country. That's it. Now you cannot question that why, because they have their own standard of research. They have their own standard of guidances which they have put it off across. We have to adhere to those. But in India, you can do it parallelly. One side you can submit to the ethics committees, okay. On the other way, parallelly, you can prepare the regulatory affairs package, submit to the health authority, and the application which we submit to the health authority, clinical trial application, is called CT04. And what is the fees for a clinical trial application in India? For a phase 1, it is 3 lakhs. For phase 2, phase 3, and phase 4, it is 2 lakhs Indian rupees. And to be very frank, it might be sounding quite high to you people. This new fees has been implemented from 2019, March 2019, from the new regulations. Before that, you all would be shocked to know, for a phase 1, it was 50,000 rupees, and for a phase 2, phase 3, and phase 4 clinical trials, the clinical trial application fees was 25,000 Indian rupees only, which is nothing for foreign companies in US dollars when you convert. So when you think that 3 lakhs or 2 lakhs are quite high, even that is also a standard, just to make sure that things are going on a more viable way. So when you submit an application, it undergoes a pre-screening committee where they will evaluate, and then there are different kind of divisions in the DCGI office or the CDSC office. Whether it's new drug, global clinical trials, NCE is new chemical entities. If it is in devices, if it is a biologicals like stem cells, vaccines, biosimilars. Vaccines is something which everyone are now very much aware, right? And you people are very lucky enough to be very frank. The days when we used to study pharmacy, quite a very less people used to know it. And the other day I was speaking with Dr. Ranganayaku sir, and I mean, I was just surprised. I mean, I was just thinking, God knows by the time when they have completed the pharmacy, how much challenges they have faced in their lives actually, because people were never aware about what is a pharmacy. Probably they might not know even if there is something which is called a pharmacy does exist. Now, at least in my time, at least I know it. And by the time, you people are quite lucky enough, because of the COVID-19 probably, that everyone started knowing that, what is pharmacy? Oh, pharmacists are the one who works in the clinical trials. They are the one. Oh, okay. Life sciences people are the one who develop these new drugs. Everyone wants COVID vaccine much faster, right? So this is something which is changing, and we have to play our role, try to educate people every time. Now, you see, once the application is being submitted, it is being referred to SEC, which is called a Subject Expert Committee. This is as per the new regulations which were introduced in 2013, wherein there were many concerns from the various NGOs which were actually questioning the India's clinical trial industry, that there is no proper regulatory cap or regulatory catch on the clinical trials, and there are many unethical practices are happening. We do not know whether the trials are happening in India are correct or up to the mark or not, and patients are not being taken care properly who are participating in the clinical trials. So that is where exactly these type of introductions have come up with from the Indian government, where in 2013 they have introduced a 3-tier regulatory review process. So we could see that over here. If you see, the reason why it is because before 2011, 2010, trials were happening in India. India was contributing a lot to the global clinical trials as part of patient data and everything. But none of those companies, or most of those companies, never marketed their drugs in India. Their main focus of drug marketing was either in the Western countries or in European countries. What could be the reason? Because they might not have felt like that, the pricing which they would be selling it in India, they might not sell it for sell at that high price. So they never thought of that. And this is where exactly those NGOs, everything were, not happy. And even that is what had thought for the Indian Health Authority also, that somewhere the Indian patients are contributing to the research, but our public or our common man is devoid of those latest medications, because those companies are applying for clinical trial applications, but were never agreeing to market those medicines in India. So somewhere they felt it could be a little bit of injustice. And that is where exactly they introduced all these 3-tier review process in 2013, which in 2017 they made it as at least one-tier review process. So every application which is submitted to Indian Health Authority undergoes a subject expert committee review, wherein the Indian Health Authority and the subject expert committee members invite the applicant to present the protocol. And these subject expert committee members are none other than the famous topmost HODs and doctors from various top medical institutes of India, and not only medical institutes, even from the pharma institutes like the Department of Pharmacology, AIMS, and all. And we have so many doctors from CMC value, and so they are the one, they are actually treating, they know the actual medical scenario in India, and they question a lot about this molecule, whether this could be a viable molecule, what is the patient data which you have it from the phase 2 or phase 1 trials, how is this getting used, I mean, how this medication you think could be a boom to Indian people. These are the questions which they come up with that, and we have to explain it to them and try to clarify them, being as an applicant. So we clarify that to, this is the reason, what is the unmet medical need, why do we need, what is the risk of this medication, or what is the benefit of this medication, where can we prove this medication to be a much better choice, what is the rationale of conducting this trial in India in specific. So these are the various justifications, and there are a lot many questions they ask about molecule safety aspects and different, pharmacokinetic and pharmacodynamic parameters, everything. So we need to be prepared. So that is where exactly, whenever I will have a subject expert committee meeting date announced, 2 to 3 days before, no sleep, nothing. I mean, a lot of, you need to be prepared with lot many aspects. And being a CRO, we are not the molecule owner. We need to depend on the sponsor and ask for those things. And it also needs to be understood that, sponsor cannot provide every detailed information, because there could be a high risk of patented disclosure. So we need to be, very calculatedly prepare everything and get on this. This is the review timelines. The current review timelines is 90 working days. So either a sponsor or a CRO or institution, whoever, prepares the dossier for the clinical trial application, and the application is CT04. They submit it, the DCGI office reviews that, and if there are any queries, they release a deficiency letter. You have to submit the deficiency response at the earliest, and then the application in parallel goes to the subject expert committee meeting, and everything goes fine, then you get the approval. Way back when I joined my career, the submissions to Indian Health Authority was in paper system. Slowly they evolved. In 2010, they have made their agenda as, in another decade's time, they would go completely paperless, and they did that. Every health authority evolves. And we had it from 2015 and all. We started getting a portal called Sugam Online Portal, wherein the application to the clinical trials are being submitted online now to the Indian Health Authority. Now, when you get a permission to do a conduct for the conduct of clinical trials, what are the things which you need to understand more clearly? You need to know it very, very clearly that, you have to abide to the local regulations, that the protocol is approved as per the new drugs and clinical trial rules 2019 and the GCP guidelines. And don't consider the ICH GCP guidelines. Along with ICH GCP, Indian GCP guidelines are also equally important. You need to. And then ethics committee approval has to be obtained before you initiate the study. CTR registration, as I said. Just to understand a couple of things from this slide is status report. So every 6 months, we have to inform the health authority what is the status of the trial, how many patients have been enrolled in India in each of the sites. If a trial has got 3 sites, each of the site has how many patients, how many screened patients, how many screen failure patients, how many randomized patients. So every screen patient cannot be randomized. There could be a chances of screen failure. And always remember, in the entire clinical trials in any country, you can never force a trial subject to be part of clinical trial. He might have agreed to take part in the clinical trial. He has taken 2 medication doses. He has to take 10 doses of medication, but after 2 months, he is reluctant to continue with the trial. He can withdraw. They are not slaves. Patients are not slaves. They are the one who are contributing to the research, keeping their life at stake, and agreeing and also having confidence on the research. So no organization or no country or no company can ever force a clinical trial patient to continue in the clinical trial. If the patient wants to withdraw at any moment, he or she can withdraw at any moment. Clear? So this is the one point which I wanted to highlight from the regulations which got implemented from 2013, where it became very, very stringent, wherein, we need to, every clinical trial application has to go with the assessment of risk versus benefit to the patients, unmet medical need of that disease or that medication in this country, that is in India, and also innovation vis-a-vis existing therapeutic options. So these are the questions which the Indian Health Authority and the subject expert committees are looking. What innovation is this molecule showing with the current existing options? Clear? There is a document which lists down all the checklist documents. So I would be sharing that with you all of your interest. You can look into it, and if you would have any doubts or anything to understand, we can again look into it, because that's again a very, very elaborate point of discussion. So I do not want to touch that at this stage. So ethics committee approval. So as I said, how does the ethics committee approval happens in India? The sponsor and CRO, compile the EC package and sends it to the site. They collect all the documents and everything. Okay. And then the investigator submits it to the local ethics committee. Local ethics committee will have a meeting wherein they will have all the representation as per the regulations. And then they will they might even call the investigator who is the principal investigator for the clinical trial, try to understand, he or she has to present the protocol and how do they plan to execute this trial in their hospital. They present everything, and then they discuss, and then if they have any queries, they will release a query letter to the investigator, which in turn, if the queries are more related with the molecule, neither the investigator will know. They will come back to the sponsor and ask, these are the queries from the ethics committee, could you please help me with the responses? And the sponsor will be collating those responses and giving it to the investigator, and they again submit those. And if there are no queries, or the queries have been responded properly, yes, you get the approval from the ethics committee to do the trial at that hospital. Import licenses, all the clinical trial materials which are part as per the Indian regulations needs an import license. Okay, who grants the import license? It's the Indian Health Authority, CDSCO grants this. What is the form which we submit for for the import license application? It is called as Form CT16. So I do not want to go in detail. So just 2 or 3 things to make a note of it, that import license application is called Form CT16. Okay, import license is issued from the health authority, and that is issued under Form CT17. Okay, and every import license is valid for 3 years. After that, you need to renew the import license. What is the reason? Because some oncology trials are planned for 5 years, 6 years. So your import license, if it is expired, you cannot import the medications. That will put the entire clinical trial or that study into a big trouble situation. Okay. Export licenses, what do we need? How do we document the use of central labs? So we need to make sure that the central labs are being properly designated and they are certified. And this is something which the sponsor takes care of those. And these are the central labs which are located either region wise, like for Asia Pacific, it could be in India, or it could be in Singapore, or it could be in Japan, or in Europe, or for some companies, they keep only one central lab across the world, be it in Europe. So every sample from US, from Latin America, from Canada, from everywhere, it goes to that central lab in Europe. The export licenses were for biological samples were the part of requirement till 2016. However, in 2016, there was a gazette notification which was released, wherein Indian government has, again, Indian Health Authority has just liberalized bit of the policy, wherein they said that there is no more export licenses required for a clinical trial which we have approved. So when we have approved a clinical trial, we have even gone through your application and we have even gone through all the details of samples which are being exported, which is mentioned in the protocol. So you do not need to apply for another export license to export those biological samples out of India, provided there are only one condition, that you have to submit an undertaking at the customs stating that this is a clinical trial biological sample and that is why we are exporting, and this is the clinical trial approval. You have to show the approval, clinical trial approval, which has been issued by the CDSCO office. But there are some items which are called as special chemical organisms, material, equipments and technology, which are called SCOMET in short. These are nothing but microbiological samples. They are not allowed without a export license. For them, we still read a export license. The reason why it is, they are special chemical organisms like a gene modified organisms, okay, or a microorganism. Microorganisms multiply very fast, right? Be it a viral organism or a microbe or bacteria or a fungi, they multiply very fast. You should have a check on that. If you do not have a proper approval for those, you are at risk of, like how the pandemic did happen last year. This is how it needs to be put up a check. So these regulations were there before the pandemic as well. So keeping all these things into consideration. Okay. Trial registration, as I have said that, clinical trial registry is the place where all the trials needs to be registered. Okay. It was officially launched in 2007. And it's hosted by ICMR, not the Indian Health Authority. But from 2009, every interventional clinical trial was mandated to be registered over there. And it's a free searchable online register. You people can just try Clinical Trial Registry India and you will know what are the different trials which are happening in the search. If you can go and you can search. Okay. SOCOM online portal, which I said that in 2015, this is the online portal which was introduced by the Indian government, wherein to make ease of business and to avoid a lot of paper submissions. Otherwise, I still remember I used to prepare these many big files and not one, almost 3 or 4 files for one clinical trial application. Those many documents are required and you have to. But now with the ease of technology and everything, and this e-governance policies which were planned in 2010 and 11, they got started implemented in 2015. But now almost every applications are getting submitted. Every application, be it a global clinical trial, be it a vaccine, be it a new drug, or be it an import license or a test license application, not for clinical trials but for manufacturing purpose, import of raw materials, everything. Okay, what does the regulation say about these special population studies in India? So why are they special population? Pregnant and nursing women, pediatrics, geriatrics, post-marketing surveillance. Why? The reason why it is because you cannot test any new chemical entity or any new biological entity directly on children, kids, or on a pregnant or nursing woman, because you are risking two people, not only the women, and but also the fetus, right? And also the geriatric subjects. So every clinical trial application we submit in India, and not only in India, even in foreign countries as well, they ask if your requirement or your inclusion criteria or the age group is 18, more than 18 to, if you're taking as 90 years, they will first question that, give us a justification or give us a proof whether your molecule is safe enough on geriatric patients. And from the health authorities perspective, from country to country, this differs. Some countries feel that 55 should be the top benchmark. Some countries like India, they feel 65 as the benchmark, 60, 65. But again, questions do come up actually. If you don't furnish ample data, they would not agree. They very clearly write it in their approval that study is approved, however it should be conducted between the age group of 18 to 50, 55 or something like that. That's it. Pediatric studies, if you are doing specifically a pediatric study, definitely you should make sure that you already have data or on adults, data on adults, or this disease condition is more specific for children and it does not occur in the adults. In that kind of situations, you'll be given approval. And European countries and everything, and in India, they also mandate that the health authorities look into the clinical trial team, site team actually, along with the principal investigator. If the principal investigator, suppose if it is a oncology medication, so they will see the principal investigator is an oncologist, but they will also see that whether the principal investigator's team, like a sub-investigator or co-investigator, do they have a pediatrician in them? Because it is a pediatric oncology trial now. Okay, so these are the things which they keep in mind, and this is where exactly being on the other side, where you are applicant to the regulatory authority, and what we call it as, I am working in regulatory affairs department. It is my prime responsibility to see the protocol, understand it, and prepare things much prior rather than anticipating any query. Even 1 day delay in the approval of a drug into the market costs almost $8 million for a company from the research perspective. And that is not to the company, that is to the entire society as in a healthcare burden it happens. And if you're getting a query from the health authority, you are delaying the approval, right? You're delaying the clinical research. Right. So requirements of sites in India, if you see from the sites perspective, it should be multi-specialty sites. Medical colleges and hospitals are being given more importance. They should have 24-hour emergency facility. Why? Because all these medications are in clinical trials. They are investigational new drugs. They are not yet been approved for marketing. So you never know that, the patient has taken 7 doses, but on the 8th dose, the patient has come today, has taken in the hospital and has gone home. But all of a sudden there are some anaphylactic reactions or adverse events start happening. You should have 24 hours emergency facility so that the patient can immediately come and join. You can't predict. This is still in research. Qualified investigators and adequate resources, which do have it in India. Established SOPs for every task. And any site which needs to be added during a clinical trial which is already ongoing. Suppose we started with 5 clinical trial sites in India, but we do want to increase more sites because the recruitment is not happening. We actually thought that all the 5 sites will contribute to 30 patients, for example, I'm giving. But all the 5 sites could hardly give us 15 patients. We still are lack of 15 more patients. Does that mean that we will wait? Let these 5 sites only 1 more year, we will wait for 15 more patients? But do we know that the 15 more patients will be guaranteed in the next year? No, right? We cannot prolong the clinical research timeline. We need to make sure the clinical research timeline should be squeezed as much as possible, and that is what the pressure we always feel it actually at every corner of time. Additional sites can be included. This is what the strategy which we propose. Yes, we need to include additional sites because we have identified 2 more sites which can contribute much more patients. They may even ask, the sponsor may ask that, or the health authority may ask, why you did not consider these 2 sites previously. There could be a number of reasons. Already a competitive trial was running in that site, which is now completed. Now, if there is a competitive study running in the same hospital, why would you give it to that investigator? Because he would be confused to whom he has to divide the patients. But now that trial is over, and he still have those kind of patients visiting at his hospital. Clear? Okay, now the last point, I think, I'm sorry, just run past a lot of time. Would not take much time of everyone. Maximum of 5 minutes. Is that fine for everyone?
Yes, sir, please. Yeah.
Yeah, I'm really sorry for that, running through more, but just wanted to just touch base on this emergency use authorization. Okay, so this emergency use authorization is relatively a new tool for FDA, and not only FDA, okay, even for Indian Health Authority and also for the EMA as well. Every health authority has got this emergency use authorization, which is a new thing. Why is this? In emergency situations like the current situation which we faced it last year, the COVID-19 pandemic. We cannot have the time, or we cannot wait for entire 15-20 years for the drug or the vaccine has to be developed, and the situation is serious, situation is life threatening. You need to consider different aspects over here. You can see the guidelines, the federal guidelines, under 564, where they allow the unapproved medical products to be used, and they use it with this emergency use authorization. If you people have ever heard of any of the news or anything, if you read it very clearly, and if the news team has been, be it a media news or a paper media or anything, they have used the correct terminologies, they should have used the emergency use authorization. They might have said, recently we heard it off last week, I think, that US FDA has given emergency use authorization for J&J COVID-19 vaccine. What does that mean? It does not mean that the drug is approved for marketing. It is approved only for emergency use, that is for COVID-19 situation only. If the COVID-19 situation goes off, that's it. Any agency doesn't have the power to issue emergency use authorization without any declared emergency. And COVID-19 is being declared as a pandemic, right, by the World Health Organization. So it is like for anthrax, for Ebola, enterovirus, and the Middle East respiratory system syndrome, and the H1N1 as well. So the Tamiflu drug for infants and young children for the treatment. So it was given as emergency use authorization because H1N1 pandemic was also there, but it was not as a big pandemic as COVID-19. But yes, it was a pandemic which was declared by the World Health Organization. What are the minimum requirements? That it should potentially outweigh the risks. So the benefit should outweigh the risks. And that is where exactly, if you people, this morning I was looking into one of the news article wherein I could see 2 or 3 European countries like Norway, Denmark, they have actually stopped the AstraZeneca vaccine, use of AstraZeneca vaccine, because of some blood clots being found. What is the reason? Because see, this is approved as an emergency use authorization. So there could be side effects, because every side effect and the detailed clinical trial has not been performed or cannot be performed in this such short timeline. So that is where exactly, and European Medical Agency has come up with a clarification letter that it is safe. They have reviewed the different parameters, and they are still reviewing different parameters of the vaccine, and it is safe to be used. Could we see the emergency use authorization for COVID-19 vaccines? Yes, we had seen it. Indian government also has approved 2 vaccines, right? One is Covishield from Serum Institute of India, which is nothing but the AstraZeneca and the Oxford vaccine, and our own indigenous Bharat Biotech vaccine, right? So the Bharat Biotech vaccine, there was a lot of chaos, right? I'm not sure if you people have seen in the news and other things, where people started questioning that the subject expert committees have reviewed the data. What is this approval with the clinical trial mode? They do not understand all this and everything. But that's the need. This is what is an emergency authorization, emergency use authorization. And then the sad part is, questions are always being put up when it is an indigenous Indian, origin and other things. I do not understand who actually is the culprit, or probably we need to give it a thought for ourselves that, are we really trying to see that, we are uplifting our own Indian companies to that standard? People question a lot, but those people who are questioning, they should have at least give it a thought. I have seen so many news articles wherein people started questioning. We do not know what is this approval in clinical trial mode. They should actually first understand the emergency use authorization. What does that concept mean actually? And to be very frank, 25th of February, 25th of February, or last week, not 25th of February, last week there was one SEC meeting held solely for the Bharat Biotech vaccine, wherein they have presented the interim data of phase 3 clinical trial to the Indian health authorities, and they have showed it that the vaccine efficacy in phase 3 clinical trial at the interim point itself is 83% efficacious. I can show that also from the DCGI website after some time. So that's, is there a risk using any product that has only been granted an emergency use authorization? Of course, yes. People has to understand which common public do not know, and we being from the pharmacy profession or from the clinical research profession, we have to educate people. Hey, look, you want an approval or a medicine in 1 year's time, and when you get this medicine, you again doubt this medicine's capabilities. This is not fair. And every country you see has never made vaccination compulsory to its people. No country has made. They are coming in phase wise. Now is the phase for senior citizens and also for people who are more than 45 years with comorbidities. But again, is the government or any health officials coming at our home and mandatorily vaccinating us? No. Okay, so these are the things we need to educate everyone. Okay, I know it's too much of concept which was in a short time or in a day, but definitely this could be a situation for a couple of you. Don't worry, don't get tensed or anything. If you have any doubt or any other aspects, please feel free to reach out to me. So I open the floor for any questions right now, and thanks everyone. Thank you, Dr. Rangnaikulu sir. Thank you, Dr. Sridhar sir. Thank you, Durga Prasad sir. Everyone, and it was a cherished memory for me to be back to college one or the other day, and at least today was in a virtual mode at least. So I stop it here, and we can take down any questions if anyone has got any doubts. Are there any questions in the question and answer log?
Thank you very much, sir, for most interesting and informative session. You have given an in-depth knowledge about clinical trial phases, process, and requirements. It is really very informative and interesting. Thank you very much, sir.
It's my pleasure. It's all my pleasure.
1 minute, one
Dear
minute.
participants, if you
See,
want to ask any
1
questions, you
minute.
can ask. Yes, sir.
Yeah, 1 minute. Any questions from the pharmacy practice department? It's very happy. See, your has been integrated with the talk of Sharvan. Thank you. I have a little, out of the interest of the students and academia, I would like to ask one thing. It's not a question, just I would like to clear the clouds of the pharma experts. So, is there any specific reference books and specific reference data to update the knowledge at the level of UG and PG program regarding the regulatory affairs and clinical trials. As I said earlier, with the reference of jurisprudence and taking the liberty of the Drugs and Cosmetics Act, we can expand some, kind of knowledge in the different areas, different countries. That's fine. But is there any available, readily available? Because it varies to company company. Regulations are going to vary from company to company and country to country. But I do agree. But what is your just advice and list of information for the academia, those who are studying for university examination or any examinations?
So from the academic perspective, I think the current knowledge which they have it should be, fulfilling the things for them, because they are more focused on the basic concepts and other things. But just to try to understand before they are coming into the industry, I would always encourage if the students can browse into the health authority websites. Be very specific, as I still remember those days when you used to insist us a lot not to use short forms. And this is something which I also insist a lot to so many new joinees in the company, as if we ask them that what is the health authority name for a country, people do come up with very short forms, and that is obvious because that is a short form which they use it, like MHRA for UK, TGA for Australia. But I do specifically ask them that what does TGA stand, and this comes up from those days where when you people used to teach us, and you people always used to stress us on those aspects, that before using any short form we need to understand the word properly. That's the main thing. And they also need to just browse up the guidelines for a specific health authority. Most of them will be in English, and trying to understand where exactly are those, try to understand whether there are any specific application forms, what are the names of those forms, and what are those guidelines called as. So for EU, if we see EU, they call it as they are coming up with the new guidelines, which is called the EU CTR, Clinical Trial Register, which would be kicking off from 2021 December. But they again, the European Union EMA has European Medical Agency has given a timeline to shift that, accommodate that it won't be an immediate implementation. So there will be a transition period which will be there. So these are the things which they can get into the website and see. Those are the things which makes lot of impact when somebody is coming for an organization, and it makes a great value actually. If a country has got an online submission, every country has got their own name, like how we call it as Sugam for Indian Health Authority. For Singapore, they call it as Prism database. And they call it as, they don't call FDA, they call it as HSA, Health Singapore Authority. So that is how they call it actually. So these are the things which they need to learn it. And uh, I would also be checking about the current syllabus and everything which are there. And if there is anything which I find it where some or the other informations can be put up as an additional thing, I can share. If I have those documents and all, we can anyhow have those documents. With regard to Indian Health Authority, these guidelines of new drugs and clinical trials are there in the website, and that's something which I can show it to, give it to them. Anything, they are in public database, so there is nothing of confidentiality aspects altogether.
Well. I appreciate Mr. Shravan. So it's not so simple because it required a lot of exposure and experience to use such kind of appropriate word answer. Everything is global is very small village now. Based on the technology, we had to browse, we had to be in a thrust to learn something. Really appreciate you have covered the entire thing right from FDA to the clinical evaluation and validations, research and methodology. Really, this so deliberation is quite useful for our young minds. We feel proud for the deliberation. Rest of thing is that I request our organizers, please.
Thank you so much, sir.
Thank you, sir. Now I request convener of today's session, Dr. D. Ranganaikulu, sir, and organizing secretary of today's sir, to present certificate of appreciation to honorable speaker of today's.
I invite Dr. Sridhar sir.
Shravan,
I request.
Good afternoon, sir.
Shravan,
Yes, sir.
yeah, at the outset, you please accept our heartiest congratulations for such a wonderful and in-depth presentation on the clinical trials and regulatory affairs.
Thank you so
You
much,
are
sir.
a live example today for what the industrial experience can transform an individual. So, as a student, what you are and what you are today, that clearly indicates what the industrial experience can transform an individual to achieve his goal. So, we are really fortunate to have you as a speaker today for the given talk. But unfortunately, the thing is that the students are not able to get the essence of this. If they were present physically, it would have been much more impactful. So though it was a webinar, we wanted that it to be a seminar so that the students definitely benefited a lot from this seminar. So we look forward in the future for your physical presence on campus to motivate the budding pharmacists.
Definitely, sir.
From our side, to please accept a token of appreciation, the certificate and memento as a memory for this day. Thank you, Shravan. I once again wholeheartedly congratulate you and appreciate you for the way you have presented the content today. That was marvelous.
Thank you so much.
So we look forward for your physical presence on campus very soon.
Definitely. I hope the COVID situations go down and everything comes to normal as soon as possible, and would be very much happy to see you all in person.
Yeah, there's one more chance is there. I follow the things in the month of August. We usually stay for 3 days. We conduct the all different workshop programs. Haven't take it trends from myself.
Sure, sir.
Appreciate once again for your eventual explanation for more where you took more than 2 hours. And not only motivation, you have given the accuracy information regarding this clinical data, clinical survey, and regulatory affairs and role of limitations also. Appreciate for your vast deliberation. God bless you for the
Thank you so
progress.
much, sir.
Thank you, sir. Now
Yeah,
I
and
request Mr.
yeah,
Durga sir to
small
deliver
request
vote of
from
thanks for today's program. Yes, sir.
a small request from my end. If any of the students have got any doubts or any of the things they are not clear or anything, if they can
Please pass on your
inform.
mail ID. With your permission, we'll pass out that mail ID. Let them
Yes, sir.
feel free access to communicate. Okay.
Sure, sir. Yes, sir. Yeah.
Thank you
Thanks.
very much.
Thanks.
Shravan, I have a small doubt.
Yes, sir.
Is there any certificate courses available regarding clinical trials and regulatory affairs so that our students can enroll if they are for paid or any free?
There are a couple of certificate courses available, sir.
Okay.
From ICRI was there previously, and there are some other. I need to cross check. One of my reportee does completed that kind of a course very recently, so I will just try to check. and I hope now every certificate courses have come up with this online mode, so it would be quite helpful for any of us. So we need to try to see on those aspects. But one of the thing from the industry perspective, I would encourage if they really do not want to spend too much on the certificate courses and other things, they should focus more on their communication skills and the logical aspects. That we are something which we are focusing more on day-to-day basis for any fresher. And the major aspect remains is every company has now become more of a global aspect, so world is very small, so we expect if they communicate well through foreign people and other those things, so that is something which is more important. And definitely these certificate courses add value to them, there's no doubt in it. But yes, but if somebody is I do understand we have so many people who would be from different strata of their life, some could not afford for it. So if for them we need to encourage them, if they should have a great communication skills which they can develop it off, that's something which definitely put them. And once they are in an industry, they can probably definitely do the certification course in parallel as well.
Okay, sure. If you have any such information, please share us so that
I
we
will
can
share
pass
it
it
with
to our
you.
students.
Yes, sir. I will share it with you, sir. Definitely.
Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Now I request the professor to deliver a vote of thanks for today's program.
Thank you, Lakshmi. Good afternoon to respected chairperson of Sri Padmavati Educational Institutions, Srimati P. Silochana Madam, Director Sir Pranis Sir, Principal Sir Dr. D. Ranganayakulu, Head HOD Sir Sridhar Sir, and today's speaker Sharvan Battula, Manager Clinical Trials and Regulatory Affairs Parexel, and the faculty and the participants of today's live webinar. On behalf of SPSP, I would like to propose vote of thanks for this national. First of all, I would like to thank Sharvan Battula for an extraordinary and in-depth information on clinical trials and regulatory affairs and role in drug development, discovery, and into the market. I would also like to thank Principal Sir for motivating and guiding us to organize this webinar. And also, I am thankful to the teaching and non-teaching staff of Sri Padmavati School of Pharmacy for their support in successful completion of today's webinar successfully. My special thanks to Dr. A.S. Charan for his technical support in successful completion of this webinar. Last but not least, I am also very thankful to all participants for their active involvement in attending this webinar. And I also requesting all the registered participants to actively participate in upcoming webinars from our institute. So finally, I am thankful to all the organizing committee members of today's webinar for successfully completing this webinar. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much, sir.
So have a wonderful day.
Thank you so much, sir.
Thank you, sir.
Soon we'll meet. Soon we'll meet. Okay.
Sure. Definitely, sir.
Thank you, dear virtual participants, for an active participation and making this event a grand success. We request you all to fill the feedback forms sent through chat box, and upon filling the feedback forms only, you can get your e-certificate. Thank you all once again. Have a good day.
Well done.
जनगण मन अधिनायक जय हे भारत भाग्य विधाता पंजाब सिंध गुजरात मराठा द्राविड उत्कल बंगा विंध्य हिमाचल यमुना गंगा उच्चल जलधि तरंगा तव शुभ नामे जागे तव शुभ आशीष मांगे गाहे तव जय गाथा जन गण मंगलदायक जय हे भारत भाग्य विधाता जय हे जय हे जय हे जय 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 हे